Hey guys, welcome back to the Buzz Weaver channel. And I had to cover some news because we are at an unprecedented time right now and things are really starting to move in some very interesting directions. You guys have probably seen the viral video of this father blasting critical race theory in a viral speech, and he describes his life and working as a medical professional. And have we reached the point now where society is starting to see and understand the direction that progressives and the left have been leaning towards now since perhaps the Obama administration and the creation of Black Lives Matter, where cities are seeing their police departments so demoralized that, like here in Atlanta, the police weren't even responding to certain events and activities because, of course, Keisha Bottoms told them that they couldn't do like particular pursuits in their vehicles and so forth. So many of these cities are reaching a boiling point. And we learned this week also from Portland, their riot squad essentially resigned after one of the officers was in court or was accused of, I guess, assaulting someone while in the capacity of an official as a police officer. So we're seeing that happen. Very similar to the police officer or marshal who was fired from his job for doing a little skit about LeBron James. And I can kind of see where, yes, if you're in an official capacity in your uniform, you know, maybe you want to stay away from that, maybe joke around with your fellow officers and so forth, you know, because people are still people. But when you introduce it into social media, you are now in the environment of the cancel culture and the outrage mob who spend most of their days in social media, on social media, because it's accessible, it's easy to access, and they can be on a phone, they can be on a tablet, they can be on a PC, they can be at their local cafe or at one of their local little event meeting things that they do where they pile on and, of course, go into raid brigades. But it's very important because now we have Ivory, who is a journalist for Fox 26 in Houston, Texas, who is now really spilling the beans, coming out and revealing a lot of information about the media. Now, you guys, if you have been here on my channel for the last 3 years, you guys already know what my mantra is. The Democrats, working alongside the mainstream media, tech giants, special interests, and activists, did everything they could to convince people to hate President Trump as much as they did. And Ivory here is one of those individuals, but her story falls more into the current pandemic that we had. And if you guys haven't already, be sure to stop by the channel and check out the Friday vlog where I talk about Ivory's story. Now, what really hit home for me, what punctuates a lot of what I talk about here on the channel, because of course when I post my videos on Facebook and other platforms, friends or acquaintances or people in general or even the outrage mob and cancel culture will say this, that, and the other. How can you demonstrate this? Or what is your evidence? What is the information that you're using? And it's right here in front of us. Many of you know that I refer very often to the article by Molly Ball in Time Magazine, The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. And I just dropped my mouse. And if you guys haven't seen that video, by all means, be sure to go onto my channel and go through the recent uploads, and you can find this particular video. Or I'll link it down below this one if you guys want to check it out, or I'll just put in a link up here in the top right-hand corner. I got the mouse back up again. All right, so Changing America, and this is very pivotal, very sobering, and probably why I wanted to do this video tonight, in the middle of the night, Monday morning, 6 after 12. Fear of link to Trump motivated expert skepticism of lab leak theory, scientist says. At the time, it was scarier to be associated with Trump and to become a tool for racists, so people didn't want to publicly call for an investigation into lab origins. Now, this story revolves around, of course, the information concerning Wuhan. But What we're learning now as things are starting to unfold is that it goes a little bit more beyond that, because scientists, experts in the fields, medical doctors, and others were concerned. As scientists with relevant expertise, we agree with WHO, Dr. Tedros, U.S., and 13 other countries and EU, that greater clarity about the origins of COVID is necessary and feasible to achieve. We must take hypothesis about natural and laboratory spillover society. So what was happening was individuals in the community of medicine, in the community of virology, and all of the medical professionals out there combating the pandemic, of course, could not mention or could not talk about the drug hydroxychloroquine. And I may get a demonetization or even a age restriction for having said it just now. And it's interesting to see here because I know a lot of people want to have a smoking gun, Chan told NBC. It's more like breadcrumbs everywhere, and they're not always leading in one direction. It's like the whole floor is covered in breadcrumbs. So you have all this information that's out there that can be discussed, but there is a fear, the establishment, cancel culture, outrage mobs. If you're not on board with the narrative, then they're going to go after you. Now, Ivory goes into some very interesting details that is inside baseball, as you want to call it, about the media. Things that we talk about, but of course, our opposition always roll their eyes about because they're like, well, how do you know that? Well, how do you know this? How do you know that? And even when you produce the evidence, they'll just dismiss it, or they'll go into whataboutism, and then of course they'll always bring it back to President Trump. In this particular video here, Ivory is talking about how the business models within the networks were happening and things that were going on within the networks, how they were kind of breaking things down into racial demographics, as well as what they call BBO, and that's it's a broadband offerings, so internet access. You know, them being able to reach out more through internet, because what's happening right now is people like Tim Pool are gobbling up a lot of viewers on their political journalism, or on their journalism regarding politics and just, you know, stories and current events in general. And now you have Ivory, who's doing now kind of the same thing now that she's obviously been fired from her Fox 26 there in Houston, Texas. And here she's describing what happened here. Very disturbed to learn Dr. Joseph Varen's hospital has now been targeted with 2 letters from the Texas Medical Board after I allowed his soundbite from last year to play again this week. And she talks about that on Tim's show. And here's kind of what it revolves around. It's especially disturbing when you look at the number of lives he's been saving over the course of this pandemic. Current COVID-19 death rate at his hospital is at 6.7%. COVID hospital death rates in the CDC study of 63 hospitals is at 12.5%. And at the center of his treatment is hydroxychloroquine. But because President Trump talked about it, made an issue of it, now suddenly, obviously people could talk about it. And then, of course, now what's happening to combat a lot of what I'm talking about right now, concerning Ivory, concerning hydroxychloroquine, and this doctor's ability to have a very good track record against the pandemic, is that they want to refer back to the doctor from Cameroon, if you guys remember her, the demon seed lady. And I thought it was interesting because a lot of my responses to the left is, how is it that you guys talk about equity and the recognition of other cultures and ideologies and philosophies of other countries, and then suddenly when this person isn't on board with your narrative, suddenly you want to go after them? So that I always found very curious. So as I mentioned earlier, I do have the video that I did on Molly Ball, the secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. The video is doing quite well. I want to thank all of you guys that have stopped by, liked it, and commented on it as well. But here we have a little bit more of conclusive information regarding the narrative-driven ideology and philosophy of the left to frighten experts, medical professionals in the field, virologists. Well, we've already seen what they did to the Asian virologist that used to appear or has appeared on Tucker Carlson's show. If you're not on board with the narrative, if you're not on board with the mainstream media, if you're not on board with the Democrats, progressives, and the left, they will do everything they can to shut you down. And this is what it's coming to. It's important that you guys understand the significance of this, because now we're seeing people push back. And did it take critical race theory for people to really recognize how much of an impact progressivism, outrage mob, and cancel culture has had on our society? The detriment that it's had on our society, not to mention the Dow Jones. And it's just a continuing disaster in certain areas, because if you saw any of what was going on with the G7, I mentioned that in the Friday vlog as well. I mean, Biden did not come out and really convince a lot of people that not only is he capable of being president, and whether he's capable of making it through a sentence. And here we are. So the country, the United States, is in a very vulnerable position right now, because our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran specifically, maybe even North Korea, are rattling sabers. They are testing the limits of the United States. China is flying sorties around Taiwan, causing Taiwan to have to respond by sending up their own planes and stuff to see what's going on. Of course, that taxes the resources of Taiwan. The Russians just had one of the largest practicing military maneuvers out in the Pacific since the Cold War. So we're seeing a lot of saber rattling. We're seeing a lot of this positioning going on with our adversaries. And of course, I can understand why individuals like Macron in France are so excited that Biden has, reintroduced the Paris Agreement, because we're paying 60% of it. We're paying a huge majority of NATO as well. We're paying for a NATO military that we don't even use in the United States, or we don't even use NATO. We fund them to help Europe from Russia, of all people. So it's a very interesting time that we're in right now. And I appreciate your guys' help. I appreciate your guys liking and commenting on the videos. I hope that you guys are following me on various of the social media platforms that I belong to. Those will be linked below this video. And I just wanted to bring this message to you guys. I hope you had a great weekend, a great Father's Day. And of course, as you see appearing there on the screen, that would be the channel icon to subscribe to the channel, along with notifications, as I've been doing video shorts as well. And I will see you guys in the next video.